Good afternoon. I'm Steve Jump, and I am here to take you to the end of the CISO Africa conference. I hope you've enjoyed your journey through the world of the CISO and all of his supporting minions so far. It's been quite an eventful 2 days. I have enjoyed pretty much everything I've listened to so far. So, to make it worth your while, they keep the best till last. I hope they let you into that secret on the first day. But not just the best. I am hoping that if I can live up to the hype that I've set myself with my introduction here, that I have a few points that when shared with you might help you to avoid serious problems that have affected some of your peers and may help you to save your own organizations from multi-million rand problems. So, I'm talking about behind the human firewall. Why is that important? Well, the human firewall is basically your front line against silly mistakes. But the reality is, it has human in the term. So, as we are all human, definitely myself included, if you're looking at all the buttons I'm pressing wrong here, we make mistakes, often, frequently, sometimes we spot them, sometimes we don't. So, we're living in the world of cybersecurity in a business and corporate environment. So just occasionally, we end up with one of those days. And sometimes it starts with a phone call, and depending on where you are in the particular hierarchy, this first thing in the morning can be 30 minutes past midnight or 7:30. But if the conversation says, can you explain why all of the CEO's files have just been encrypted, you really know things are only going to get worse. So if there's the first hint that someone has been stamping around in the dark shadows of your business network, this may be a sign that they're leaving, not arriving, because you very rarely ransomware systems before you've taken what you need. So, why did they do it? That's really quite irrelevant. There's many reasons, but the fact that they actually could do it is a real problem. And that is why we need to look at how can we catch these accidental click-throughs. Our human firewall is going to stop many of them, maybe as much as 90%. But the reality is when they do click, we need to make sure that the security systems we have in our alternate layers of our layers in depth are able to catch the fallout. Because finding out how it was done after the event is great, but we need to make sure we know how it could happen so we can prevent it from happening in the first place. Ideally, we're following these points. It is not inevitable that this type of incident is going to be part of your future. Not to say that you should get too smug, because it can happen, but the reality is, to those companies that have been following the basic rules, and these rules weren't invented last year, any impact that they encounter is minor. So, where does a ransomware attack start? Or any other cyber attack, really? It starts with a fish, spelled with PH. And the main reason it starts there is because any attacker wants to get in. And once you are in, you need to be able to do things. And to do things, it is 100 times easier if you can have a credential. So all it takes is one click, one moment of distraction, and your password can be acquired. Maybe it was just your password, but maybe as you clicked OK or enter with your password, it installed a piece of software, some malware. Maybe it was adware. Maybe they just want to be able to send really rude stuff or other attacks to your mailing list, or maybe they want access into your business system. As a rule of thumb, if your job title has the word executive in it, assume they are after your systems. So once they've hooked you, they have your account. Your account should be a normal user level account. So they're going to want to get away from your machine. They want to get somewhere where they can start doing a little bit of reconnaissance, a bit of looking around. So they're going to want to traverse through, looking for other machines, looking for an administrator's PC, maybe a server. First prize is to move. Double first prize is to obtain an administrator account. And that's what's going to happen. And once they have an administrator account, they pretty much own you. And afterwards, they can do anything that they like. So that's why we talk about phishing being so dangerous, but it is the account credentials that are obtained and how they are used to obtain the administrator level privileges, which will be used to do the harm. So you need to be able to ask some questions here. So you can ask these questions of yourself if your job title is Chief Security Officer, or if you're running business, if you're in the finance department looking after risk. Series of questions that you could ask. You should have a reasonable expectation of nearly immediate answers, but please don't blame me if the people you ask the question of get upset if you say you want them now. They should be available now, but this is the real world. So, do you know how many system administrators you have? Should be a simple question. Do you know how many users you have? Yes, a lot of the software you use will be licensed per user. And do you know, out of the set of users and administrators, how many actually have admin access, which means the ability to make system changes, to install software, to change configurations? And do you know what those users and administrators are actually trying to do? It's an open-ended question because the reality is you're probably not going to know. But inside your IT departments and inside your security departments, there most certainly are people whose job exists primarily to be able to ensure that only known people are on your network and in your systems, and everybody is authenticated to do the work they're entitled to do. So this would be good, but quite often someone wants to install software. They're given administrative privileges to install that software, and they're never revoked. Over years, you can find that if you've never actually done a full audit of your Active Directory system, you might be surprised to find that 70 or 80% of your normal users have the ability to run administrator level commands. If those users are phished, you are literally handing a burning stick of dynamite to the attacker and say, get on with it, guys. So how do we protect ourselves? Well, it's not rocket science. Okay, it's slightly complicated. In this particular rocket, there were about 1,000 people on the network, all watching, changing, configuring, and managing the systems that allowed this boiler come rocket tank to take off. But there was only one person who had the ability to initiate the command. It could have been a different person, but only one person had that right, and no one else could do it while they had that right. Any mistakes there tend to leave very large clouds of smoke and a lot of damage. So, basic rule, normal users, these are the people who are running your business, should not have admin rights. It's worth checking. If you can't get an answer to that question, it's probably worth checking with a little bit more persuasion. And practically, only those administration rights users should be able to install or run apps on critical servers. If you think about it, an application server will be used by one of your business users. It's how they actually generate wealth for your business. But that user should not be able to touch or even see the operating system on that server. That is your internal administrator privilege only. So no normal user should be able to even list processes on a server. To do that, It's really beneficial. In fact, if you are a major corporation today, you almost certainly already have a privileged user or privileged access management system already deployed. For one thing, it allows you to comply with a variety of privacy legislation to ensure that only the right people are able to get in and access your data. And two, it is by far the fastest and most efficient way of onboarding new technical staff so that they only have access to the things you think they're supposed to. And it's a management, approval, and audit tool, and it's really a quite powerful way of staying safe and sensible. As with all things, it is active, it is in use, 24/7, changes are being made. So it is important that all access, admin and user access, but we're really focused with admin users here, not just normal users. Every attempt to authenticate needs to be logged, whether that is success or fail. Users should not be resetting their password very, very often. If you have multi-factor authentication, you will have extended your period between password resets. It's not uncommon when after you've had your multi-factor authentication working for 3 or 4 months, to change your password reset period to 90 or 120 days. This is important. That actually becomes a defensive control. Because if the user doesn't change their password every 120 days, then anyone who's changing it might not be the real user. This is 10 times more important if your account is an administrator and there's even a possible chance that your MFA tokens could be compromised. Second, log all admin level processes on every one of your critical systems and every other system you can fit into that, is to make certain that anything that runs with administrative privileges, and by definition has the ability to enact code at admin level, is logged, and you know that they're happening every day. You don't need to look at every single one. Keeping a simple list of the process names, the times that they run, and generally the memory and resources that those processes use. They should not be changing very much on a daily basis. You're interested in anything that's unusual. You are very interested in anything you've never seen before. And you are interested in something that happens at a time of day when no one would normally be doing anything. This is all part of the background, and this is part of where you are actually trying to get your sense of what's right and sense of what's wrong. And of course, any process that is started without any identifiable source of authority should be of interest. When you first start this up, you'll be amazed. You've probably been through this process already. But the very first time you start counting the processes on a production server, even if it was running 6 applications, you might find you've got 600 or 700 processes in the background that are all supposed to be there. Those are the ones that you're interested in making sure that they don't change. The extra processes, it's literally, it's a counting game. It's almost a whack-a-mole principle. If you've never seen it before, you can't just move on and think, IT's done it, check it. Everything that you do is practically going to be recorded. That goes without saying. Sensibly, you will have it recorded off system. A log file that has the ability to be removed by someone with admin access on a server is a pretty thing, but it's ornamental. It's not of practical value in preventing a cyber attack. So you need to be logging into some kind of common log collection framework, which needs to be pretty much a write-only environment. But the information that you are putting into those logs, this could be part of your security administration process. You have a security operations center. You might be using some kind of security information and event management, or you could be using a security orchestration, automation, and response platform that is making guesses on your behalf. Either way, those logs should be going through those platforms, and some first attempts at looking for unusual should be happening before they are stored. So it's a bad joke, but logs need to be used when they're fresh. Old logs become mature logs, which is they're used to make planks. You need to be working on your logs when they are fresh. The reason for that is every process that runs with an admin function, every time a user changes to or from admin, every time a privileged account is invoked, authenticated, and used, there is a log record. If your systems are set up that without fully active authentication, your admin accounts cannot be used, your attacker needs to steal an account or create an account. This cannot be invisible. So new accounts appearing as if by magic are of interest. Existing accounts that are suddenly unavailable to their users. This is very interesting because unless you changed it and forgot your account or you disconnected your MFA for some reason, your account should always be working and under your control uniquely. If your admin credentials suddenly appear on another system and they're not in your control, this is really something that should be looked at. You might have been the person who was phished, in which case double whammy, the attacker struck gold. But that does not mean if you've got multi-factor authentication set up, he should be able to run without detection. It's most important that you look at your failures and successes, because repeated failed attempts is also an indicator of something wrong. And it does not mean that your chief financial officer has suddenly developed Alzheimer's and can't remember where they put their authentication token. It may be someone has tried to get in, has a password, but is unable to complete the process. These are the things you should be actively looking for. Every one of these items is a precursor to a network system compromise. These things don't just happen. There is a long, slow knocking on the door before the door is kicked in. Being able to prove what happened after the event because you had logged it is great if you're a forensic engineer. It's embarrassing when the forensic engineer says, well, these guys broke in 3 months before you spotted the ransomware attack. Very hard to defend that, especially if you've been paid to look at those logs. So this is all part of the business question, is it working? And it's part of the operational question of, am I looking in the right places? So failures and successes, this is all positive information. When an attacker gets in, he's going to want to do something. He's going to want to prepare and enable himself to do other things. So he may change some of the configuration files on your machine to basically remove barriers, to allow him to run code, to allow his particular codes to your allow list. On a critical business system, at some level, perhaps not as extreme as full whitelisting, you should have a list of permitted processes. That is first prize. Add my code to your list of permitted processes. Somebody should notice it being added. Or smarter, how about the attacker takes over the name of one of your processes and just replaces it with extra code. So instead of it being a 150K runtime environment, it's now a 4 meg runtime environment. You should notice that change. It's either very badly managed IT, in which case you have someone to go and moan at, or IT know nothing about it, in which case you are now on the tail of a hacker. Simple and easy way, it's not even system intensive. It is unlikely you're going to have more than a few hundred kilobytes of files. Hash them on a daily basis and keep a record. You can run automatic playbooks to basically compare yesterday's hash with today's hash or your reference hash. It's a few seconds. It's a background thing that you just need to check it runs. You'd be amazed at what that can uncover. And of course, you have your identities. Check, are all the identities on your systems matching exactly to the approved accounts that you have enabled? Have you suddenly discovered that you have new employees you didn't know about? Perhaps ones that are being or not being paid, but they're just working on your network. These are all precursors to automated detection. But in many cases, these are simple scripts that could have been run. They'll just be put into your automatic daily fix. So your privileged access management layer is probably the most critical defensive layer behind your human firewall, because this is going to be the first tripwire that is encountered by your attacker. And your attacker knows this. So if all of a sudden your privileged access management, your AD approvals and validation system starts to give you trouble, do not automatically assume that this is just another system glitch, a poor patch, bad operating system practice. If your preventive control systems, your anti-malware platform, your network security monitoring system, if they suddenly appear to be behaving strangely all at the same time, don't just assume you're having a bad day. Confirm that you don't have new users, strange users, missing users, that your configuration files haven't been altered. Check that your hash and validation scripts are still working. You can make this as recursive as you like. As I said, we're not talking rocket science here. We're actually talking fundamental basics of making sure that only the right people have access to the right systems, and that we are aware if anything new comes in. If we're using an access management platform, the only new accounts will have been automatically created on a system event. If we're using privileged access management systems, the only new administrator accounts will have a complete provisioning and approvals chain. Anything that is outside of that chain is interesting with alarm bells, flashing lights, and sirens, because it shouldn't be there. It means either your process has failed or someone is failing it for you. Either way, it's a good way to spend the rest of your afternoon finding out. So that's pretty much my story of why privileged access management will help you survive a successful phishing attack, and will be greatly of value in preventing any ransomware of your critical business systems, and any other malware attack for that matter. It won't make the problems go away totally, but it will reduce your chances of being a long-term victim. By the way, when you hear about these things called advanced persistent threats with incredible long penetration durations where they've been in your network for months, in almost every case, it was because the privileged access management logs were not being examined for most of that period, and the discovery only happened when someone said, oh, why has this not run for the last 6 months? Go home, check it, make it run tomorrow. I hope you're pleasantly surprised at the result, but if not, enjoy your bad guy hunting. This is pretty much all from me. Rockets aside, if you have any questions, I'm going to be available for the next 10 minutes to answer your questions. Otherwise, the QR code will bring you through to me, and I will be happy to answer any of these questions and give you guidance offline. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference, short though that may be. Good evening.